guys do your thing. I'm good. Good. Good, Blade. All right. What's up, Blade? Hey! Ready? Yeah, let's do it, Chief. Take it away.
So, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the USDA Forest Service and our partners here, I want to say thank you for coming and showing up. You know, we are really honored to have this distinguished guest of leaders with us. We have Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. It's so great to see you here. Thank you for being here. We have Congressman Aguilar. We have Senator Padilla. We have the Governor of California, Governor Newsom. We also have USDA Secretary Vilsack. So, you know, they're here to learn about what's going on here in California. And what's happening here in California, quite frankly, are the same things that's happening all across the West. So they're here today to learn about not only the fires that are taking place, they're also here to learn about the outlook for the year 2022. And I want to just acknowledge that while you're going to be looking at communities on a map, I want to remind you that these are real communities that we're talking about, and these are real people that are being impacted by these fires. And it only takes one visit to see the impact, the devastating impacts on our communities. So let me say, before we also get started, I want to thank all of our firefighters. I also want to thank the firefighters' families for the commitment and the dedication and the passion that they have for the job that they do. I also want to thank our partners, because no one entity can do this alone. And what you will see here today is that this is a shared stewardship effort, this shared leadership, and it's a level of commitment that you just simply will not find in many other professions. So with that, I want to now turn this over to some of our leaders who's going to give you an overview of what's going on today. And the first person that I'll turn this over to is Tony Scardina. Tony is the Deputy Regional Forester for USDA Forest Service located here in California. And so, Tony, I'll call you up to maybe do the first presentation.
All right. Thank you, Chief. So I'm with my counterpart here, Wade Crowfoot, with the California Resource Agency. So what Wade and I are going to do is just kind of paint a picture. When we talk about a wildfire crisis, what does that really mean? And so I'm going to talk about what's happened the past 2 years, and Wade's going to be talking about what are we going to do about it? How do we deal with this challenge? So, you know, just this map right here, you look at it and you say, okay, fires. Fires are a part of California's landscape. It'll always be there, but what's different? So when you look at this map, the yellow on this map is from 2000 to 2019, a 20-year period. And in that period, that's 12 million acres that burned. The past 2 years in California, 7 million acres. So 7 million acres in 2 years versus 12 million across a 20-year period. So we talk about the acceleration of fire behavior related to drought, related to climate change, and then dealing with how do we help communities in that wildland-urban interface. When you look at the drought conditions, record drought conditions, as we approach the August in 2020, it wasn't quite as extreme. But what happened here? Extreme weather events. So in mid-August of 2020, we had a situation where it was really a historic event from the southern border of California all the way to British Columbia. In roughly 48 hours, 15,000 lightning strikes and 600 fire starts at one period of time. How many firefighters would it take to put all those fires out? So firefighters are triaging a situation, doing the best with what they have, but of course you're not going to be able to catch that many fires. As the weeks beyond that kind of went on, then we started getting into record conditions. We had a fire called the North Complex around the Plumas County area. In one night ran 30 miles and 200,000 acres overnight. Fires don't typically move at night like they do during the daytime, but with the drought conditions, with the warmer temperatures, that's also what we're seeing, is they don't differentiate night and day. Then look into 2021. Most of the state in extreme, exceptional drought condition, and we see that across the West, so that as the western states start to have fires as well as California, resources are strained, Firefighting resources across the country are really in triage scenarios, doing everything we can to combat that. And then during that time period, four out of 5 of the largest fires in California are the past 2 years. One of them over 1 million acres, the August complex. That is the largest fire in California history. That's a complex meaning multiple lightning strikes that then come together. And then you have the Dixie Fire this year, which is the largest single fire from one point of start. Then 2 fires, the Dixie Fire and the Caldor Fire, the first to crest over the Sierra Nevada range. So a lot of firsts in a 2-year period, I think, kind of paints the picture of what we mean by a crisis. And we're really going to have to get ahead of it with treatments across the landscape and examples that Wade's going to talk about what we're doing to collaborate in California to deal with this crisis.
Yeah, so clearly conditions are getting worse, and let's be honest, climate change means they're going to continue to get worse. The good news is that our interventions are getting better. That of course includes response, more firefighters, more helicopters, planes, technology like these drones. And it also includes more proactive upfront actions to build wildfire resilience. So what do we mean when we're talking about wildfire resilience? We're talking about actions within communities to help residents harden their homes, build defensible space. Actions around communities, creating these fuel breaks that thin the forest or woods around communities, slow down fire and let firefighters take a stand. And then actions across forests and our landscapes to restore forest health and to ensure that small fires stay small and don't get big and catastrophic. The good news is that these interventions are working. During this last fire season, which was so horrific, one of the worst fires, the Caldor Fire, so bad it crested the Sierra Nevada summit, was actually fought by heroic firefighting aided by these fuel breaks. Fuel breaks that were put in around South Lake Tahoe and Pollock Pines allowed those firefighters to take that heroic stand and to help save those communities. So this is working. Now all this work is, the foundation of all this work is a shared stewardship agreement that Governor Newsom signed with the U.S. Forest Service, making shared commitments, including 1 million acres of project, this type of vegetation management project, every year. We followed up on that with a shared action plan, this partnership, to specifically focus on what are the actions that are going to actually protect Californians. And let's hold ourselves accountable. And then in order to implement this, we've established a task force. Again, a joint task force chaired by myself and our regional forester, Jen Eberline, to focus like a laser on getting this work done. Now the good news is, as we meet here today, hundreds of projects like the ones I've mentioned are taking place across California. Our state government will spend $1 billion plus this year on this type of wildfire resilience work. Your leadership, Vice President, your leadership, Secretary Vilsack, and the resources that you're bringing into California are critical to allow us to scale up this work. So while we respond to those fires that are going to come, we do more before those fires ever start to protect California.
Any questions from anyone?
Okay, we can go to the next group.
Okay, then we'll move here.
Let me tell you a little bit about what we're preparing for in 2022 fire season. You just heard that we are in exceptional drought the past 2 years, and although we're so thankful for the rain and the snow that we got in December and January here, we're not out of the woods in terms of drought. You can see on this that certainly in January 21 it was worse with the red. A little better this year, but we're still well under normal moisture counts for this time of the year. So we'll be monitoring that as we go through the year, using that information to help us prep for this upcoming fire season. Because we really anticipate having the same conditions as last year, we are going to be taking a very aggressive initial attack stance and posture this year. Being able to get those fires out as fast as possible at the smallest acreage is one of our best strategies around firefighting. To do that, we're increasing our firefighting capacity and our staffing. And thanking you for your support on fire pay for our firefighters. Certainly, with the support from Congress with the infrastructure bill, we've been able to hire more people this year than we have over the past 5 years. So we're really looking forward to strengthening our resources that way. We certainly have our complement of aircraft and engines and hotshot crews that are housed here in this facility. So we have all those traditional methods, but we're really paying attention to technology as well. As you had mentioned, satellite imaging, certainly drones, and we're really getting and improving our fire behavior modeling. It's beyond anything that we've experienced these past 2 years, so we are getting better at that fire behavior modeling, and we'll use that along with the traditional resources. So certainly not only the hiring, staffing, we're really looking at employee welfare. You know, we've got a long way to go, no doubt about it. But having that extra staffing is going to help us with work schedules, help us with managing people's time. We also increased our rest rotation period. So we have a longer time before we have firefighters have fire assignments, so they have a little rest and recovery before they go back out again. And then also we've really increased our mental and emotional services for our firefighters. It's so tough. It is one of the hardest jobs that we have out there, and the emotional, the physical, the mental toll, it's just there. So we're really looking at increasing those services throughout the year and not only within the firefighting season. So those are some of the things we're actively working on for this year. And as we said, we cannot do this alone. And our key partner here with us is CAL FIRE. So I'm going to turn it over to Chief of Southern Operations, Mike Richwine.
Madam Vice President, as you know, firefighting in California is a collaborative effort. And this time every year, there are extensive meetings and planning sessions that occur with our cooperating agencies, such as the Forest Service, state and local fire departments. We are so grateful for the partnership that we have with the U.S. Forest Service to help us meet our common goals. And as the Secretary mentioned, I want to amplify that right now, our crews are out doing fuel breaks around communities throughout the state. And they're built, and we're having great success. And they create a buffer, a green space or a thin forest space before the communities to slow the fire, to allow our firefighters to have a chance to put the fires out. And also, we have an extensive program that we're beginning to assist homeowners with efforts to harden their homes. And through Governor Newsom's leadership, we're in partnership with the OES, we have established a joint powers agreement. And we've picked out 3 pilot programs now where we can help disadvantaged communities replace their wood-shake roofs, replace their windows, put metal screens on their attic eaves, so it will prevent ember intrusion into their home and hopefully prevent their home from burning down in a wildfire. We were also recently awarded over $138 million to fund 105 projects throughout fire prevention projects throughout the state.
2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mic check from the podium. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mic check. Mic check. Everybody has good audio? Testing 1, 2. No? Testing 1, 2. No? Testing 1, 2, 1, 2. Can you put that extra one that we had for the stenos out there? Testing 1, 2, 1, 2. One, two.
Mic check, 1, 2, mic check. Good.
Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Everybody got clean audio? Testing 1 2 1 2. Thank you.
Checking 1 2 3 4. Checking 1 2 3 4.
Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Mic check.
This is why they brought me in, isn't it? Yeah. Great.
Thank you to our Forest Service employees, and also thank you for CAL FIRE. And one of the things that I'm always amazed at is the quality of the interviews that we get from some of our firefighters. And so I want to especially thank Forest Service and CAL FIRE for the great job that they did, giving us an overview of the extreme fire weather conditions that we've had, including the prolonged drought that we've experienced, as well as the impacts to the forest health and resiliency of our nation's forests. I also want to reiterate the fact that they highlighted the importance and the impacts of working together. It was a demonstration of where no one entity can address or fix this problem alone. It takes a community of leaders, a community of people to agree to work through this. I am so hopeful, and we were sharing this message earlier. I am very hopeful, even though we've experienced some devastating losses. It's easy to talk about the impacts and the implications of what these fires are doing to our communities, as well as is doing to real people. And when you see the destruction that these fires can cause on a community, you will understand at that point how your heart tends to bleed, and it bleeds constantly. And so our firefighters have been under some extreme pressures and conditions. And I'll tell you, for the first time in a long time, that our firefighters, as well as all of us, our leaders, are very hopeful. And we're hopeful because of what President Biden and Vice President Harris has led. We're hopeful because we have a Secretary of USDA that is very understanding, very knowledgeable, very passionate about making a positive difference on the landscape. We're fortunate to have a governor of California who is unlike any other governor in my experience in any of the other states. When you're talking about putting your money where your mouth is, Governor Newsom has done an outstanding job of committing resources to forest management, trying to address climate change and the drought conditions that we're going through. I used to work here, and I know personally that he is committed. And so when you have that level of commitment that we have from a governor of a state, and when you have a secretary who's as passionate and committed, and then you have our most senior leadership and President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, it's a recipe for success. And so our intention is to address 20 million acres of national forest lands over the next 10 years. Our plan is to also treat up to 30 million acres of other federal, tribal, and state lands. And so we're doing this because we need to make a difference on the landscape. And so I'm very hopeful that. We also have a Congress that has been understanding. We have Senator Padilla, who has been with us, who has stepped into his role with great leadership. And we also have our up-and-coming leader, Congressman Aguilar. And so it is my pleasure to introduce Congressman Aguilar. Congressman?
Thank you so much, Randy. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. And let me express my thanks to the men and women here at the Del Rosa Fire Station and the U.S. Forest Service for risking their lives on a daily basis to keep us safe. Now, the last time a vice president visited us here in San Bernardino County was when then Vice President Joe Biden visited Colton High School and helped stump on the political side for a young mayor of Redlands who was running for Congress. You remember that, Alex?
I was there.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, for your leadership, for your advocacy in fighting climate change, for your commitment to the people of San Bernardino County. We know this isn't your first trip here, and we know it won't be your last. It's an honor to welcome you back. In this short year, the Biden-Harris administration has created more jobs than any previous administration, over 6 million. And we're the only economy that is stronger today than when the pandemic started. And that's only the beginning. It was my privilege to preside over the House when we pass the $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan that will support more good-paying jobs here in the Inland Empire and across this great state. And a key piece of that funding, $84 million for California alone over the next 5 years, will help deliver on that 10-year national strategy for wildfire management that Randy talked about. We're not immune to fires here in the Inland Empire. We know our history, the Panorama Fire of 1980, the Old Fire of 2003, devastated this Del Rosa community. So without a coordinated approach, bringing resources from the federal government with the state partnerships and the local relationships, these fires will continue to wreak havoc on our environment and pose significant health and safety dangers for our residents in the future. That renewed partnership begins today, and I'm proud to have supported the funding that enables the Forest Service to continue this important work. There's much more to address in the consequences of climate change and the work that we have ahead of us. The Vice President knows that, Governor Newsom knows that, Secretary Vilsack and the great folks at USDA know that. And so does my friend, a fierce advocate for climate change, a fierce advocate towards securing our children's future, and oh, by the way, he's also the pride of Pacoima, my friend, Senator Alex Padilla.
Thank you, Congressman. I have to make sure to tell my neighbors that. When they say, make sure to put your trash bins away after the sanitation truck comes through. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I want to thank the Del Rosa Fire Station and the San Bernardino National Forest for hosting us today. I also want to thank Vice President Harris, my friend, my predecessor, Secretary Vilsack, been bending his ear all day long, Governor Newsom, my friend Governor Newsom, Representative Aguilar, and all my colleagues in public service who have joined us here this afternoon to highlight how the multiple investments that we're making to both recover from and address the growing threat of fires in the future. Now, it is no hyperbole to say that the climate crisis is already a daily reality here in California. I try to appeal to my colleagues constantly that addressing climate isn't something that if we don't do it in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, what will it mean? California is experiencing it already. And it's not just California. Indeed, across the western United States, historic wildfires are becoming far too frequent and far too severe. Now, these natural disasters cause tremendous harm to families, to businesses, to entire communities and entire cities. Devastating impacts that I saw firsthand yet again last year during my statewide infrastructure tour. I was touring the state to help inform my advocacy in Congress for infrastructure investments. Part of that tour took me to Santa Rosa to talk to local leaders, including fire personnel, on what the fires there meant years ago and what the recovery process has been like. It took me to Quincy when the Dixie Fire was still ravaging communities there to see what a coordinated response could and should look like. And it's helped me lobby with my colleagues and the Biden-Harris administration to shape elements of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and we hope additional investments in the Build Back Better plan. Now, the infrastructure bill that we're celebrating is putting $5 billion towards land management and $3.4 billion specifically into wildfire risk reduction projects like the prescribed fires, hazardous fuel management, and wildfire defense grant to at-risk communities like this one, as well as better integrating data and technology to help put out fires faster. You heard some of those highlights in the briefing just down the road a little while ago. And we also know that how important recovery and restoration efforts are after devastating wildfires for years until communities completely rebound. So I'm proud to see the additional $600 million in funding from the USDA specifically for restoration and recovery efforts here in California. So again, I want to thank the Forest Service for their work to keep communities safe and their new long-term strategy, as well as the Vice President Harris, Secretary Vilsack for their partnership in making sure that this important work, and California specifically, gets the attention that it deserves in Washington, D.C. Look forward to continuing to work together to fight to protect our communities in the face of the climate crisis. And now it's my honor to turn it over to my friend and the governor of the great state of California, the Honorable Gavin Newsom.
Thank you, Senator. Well, what a difference a year makes. What a difference 2 or 3 years make. We were, it was a different place when we were battling it out with the White House that was cutting budgets, reducing investments in forest and vegetation management, that was quite intent on having a public debate, a national debate, and I don't mean this as a pejorative, I mean this quite sincerely, around raking, finger pointing, not, holding up the burden of responsibility. And here we are talking about unprecedented investments. We're talking not about a sparring partnership, but we're talking about a working partnership with an administration that not only gets it, but consistently is demonstrating they can get it done. It's not just rhetorical. We had not one, but 2 summits last year with the President and the Vice President, followed up with conversations with Secretary Vilsack and others. We asked for 5 specific actions within literally weeks. All 5 were delivered. And now, and that was worthy of applause, and now we're at a point where we have the capacity to talk not just situationally but sustainably about a long-term future where we're working more collaboratively together to address some of the issues that are at hand. And I think the issue that really is at hand today is the issue of fear. And as we deal with all these simultaneous crises, the issue of fear. On the briefing, you heard about the loss of 7 million acres just in the last 2 years in the state of California. But it's the fear of loss that's beyond just those acres. It's the fear of losing traditions, lifestyles, people. I mean, think about what happened last year. Grizzly Flats wiped off the map, a town that disappeared last year because of wildfires. Greenville, California, wiped off the map. A few years prior, Paradise, wiped off the map. So this is a profound, yes, existential moment, but in the spirit of Chief Moore, it's also a remarkable moment of resolve and resiliency. It is a point of optimism. We're not just reflecting on the enormity of the challenge and the headwinds of climate change, where the hots are getting a lot hotter, dries are getting drier, the wets with these atmospheric rivers getting a lot wetter, the extremes that we're experiencing, but we're also meeting that moment head on by looking at ways we can improve our strategies in mutual aid, working not just with local and state agencies, but the federal government in a completely new mindset and resolve. So I'm very proud to be here as a Californian, and I couldn't be more proud of the Vice President and her incredible leadership. That's not just demonstrable by the visit here today, but every day, where she has not only our back here in the state of California, but all throughout the west coast of the United States that is experiencing extreme drought. And I couldn't be more proud of our president and the entire administration and the remarkable leadership of Senator Padilla and Congressman Aguilar and others that are delivering, and members of the Assembly. And I want to close on that. Members of the legislature are here because I want folks to know as well, we're not just with our hands out to the federal government. $37.6 billion. $37.6 billion. We are committed to investing to address the issues of climate change in the state of California. There are not many nations in the world that are making those kinds of investments, unprecedented investments in making sure we future-proof this state. And again, that effort means nothing without the credible support, not just financial, coming from the federal government and the Biden-Harris administration, but also a resourceful mindset that now is front and center in terms of those partnerships, particularly with the most essential partner of all, helping us manage 56 to 58% of our wildland property, and that's the U.S. Forest Service and their new approach and the new collaborative spirit that really marks a significant part of what we're communicating here today. Madam Vice President, thank you for your incredible stewardship. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for having our backs, not only here in California, but all across the West Coast and all across this nation. We're proud of you. We're proud of the Biden administration, and I'm really grateful that so many remarkable leaders are here, and I'm grateful again to each and every one of you for participating in this historic moment and recognizing the work that lies ahead. Thank you all very, very much.
No, no big deal. Here's a news flash, Randy. Just want you to know, I'm incredibly impressed with the knowledge of the Vice President on these issues, as witnessed in the helicopter today. So if you're looking for an additional volunteer, and she's got a few hours, she is prepared. Okay, she's prepared. Senator, Congressman, thank you. We wouldn't be having this day without your vote and your support for additional resources. Very much appreciated. And Governor, you're a great partner. You're just a tremendous partner. And you were absolutely correct. The Vice President's leadership on this particular set of issues is unmatched. The President has a very personal interest in this as well, but it really makes a difference when both the President and Vice President are focused on this. Intense droughts, rising temperatures, extreme weather conditions, hazardous fuel buildup equates to longer and more intense fire years. We've talked about acres today. Let me talk about the 32 civilians who lost their life in this state because of fires over the last couple of years. Let's talk about the 3 brave firefighters who lost their lives trying to protect our lives and our property. Let's talk about the 14,117 homes, the part of the American dream that we all treasure and cherish, destroyed by fire. 3.5 million acres of U.S. forest lands impacted by fires over the last couple of years. That's why this day today is so important, and why it's important for us to focus on partnerships. And there are many partnerships, and you've heard about them today, between the state and the federal government, and between local communities in the state and the federal government. But there's also a partnership between federal agencies. And within USDA, the mission of the NRCS and the Forest Service comes together in what we refer to as our Chiefs Initiative, our Joint Chiefs Initiative. It's an effort on the part of both of those mission areas to work together to join forces and resources to commit to helping prepare communities and areas to withstand fire. And today that mission takes an additional step forward. We're announcing $48 million under the Joint Chiefs Initiative that will fund 41 projects primarily around the West, where we have the greatest need. 17 new projects are being announced, and 2 in California. The Six Rivers National Forest is getting resources to create a more resilient system, and the Klamath National Forest also benefiting from this program. So $48 additional on top of the resources that the other speakers have talked about. So partnerships are incredibly important. But the most important aspect of all of this, beyond the money, beyond the partnerships, are the people of the Forest Service and of CAL FIRES and of the local volunteer fire departments. You can't say enough about these folks. And I have the pleasure of introducing one to you today. Now, Sarah Hudson is a unique individual. Not only does she work in the Forest Service, and has for the last 6 years, but she felt that it was her responsibility, in addition to serving the public in that role, to also be a member of the National Guard. And she's had an extended career at the National Guard. And she's still in the National Guard. So the governors know, vice presidents know, how incredibly important the National Guard is. And these are amazing people that take themselves away from their families and their communities and put themselves in harm's way both here and abroad without ever hesitating. And that same thought process, that same mission is certainly true of the Forest Service. So it is really an honor. It's my honor to introduce to you Sarah Hudson, who understands and appreciates national service and is living it every single day. Sarah?
A little bit of a hair issue here. Oh, thank you. Just gonna go ahead with this then. Thank you, Secretary, for that generous introduction. I really appreciate it. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sarah Hudson. I'm a senior firefighter on Heaps Peak Helitack here on the San Bernardino National Forest, and a senior airman with the 163rd Attack Wing, California Air National Guard. Now whether, thank you. Now whether I'm flying in a helicopter for the U.S. Forest Service or at the 163rd performing maintenance on ground support equipment for remotely piloted aircraft, I'm constantly responding to wildland fires. And I have the privilege of serving others through that capacity. Fire, aviation, and military service are integral to who I am, and I would not be here today without the camaraderie of my brothers and sisters in arms and in fire. It's going to get real for a second though, because as our fire seasons continue to grow in both length and intensity, so too does the demand on wildland firefighters like myself. And while this at times can be rather daunting, the growing awareness and continuous support for the health and well-being of wildland firefighters has showed me that no matter what, we're not alone. We're never alone in this battle, right? It's given me the hope for the future and for our ability as the Forest Service to continue to serve and protect our communities. And it's for this reason that I am truly, truly humbled to introduce our next speaker, someone who's always had the welfare of California and of all Americans at the forefront. Please welcome the Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
Thank you, Sarah. Today means many things, as has been said, but for the President and me, one of the most important aspects of this visit today is the important responsibility that we all have to thank the men and women who serve so selflessly, with such incredible courage and commitment to their community. People like Sarah, like Chief, they are prepared to give their lives for perfect strangers. They do work every day that requires the highest level of professionalism, skill, dedication, and commitment. And so on behalf of the President and myself and our country, I want to thank all the men and women who serve in such difficult times, but always with such grace. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Chief. Secretary of Agriculture, Vilsack, I want to thank you. We've known each other for quite some time. He has it in his heart, as well as with the experience he brings to the task of being the Secretary, with many obligations and responsibilities, but on this one, he has put together a 10-year plan that is extraordinary, that is in depth, and that meets this moment in the way that we need, and in the way that is about looking at the future, being able to see what is in front of us clear-eyed, and then be prepared to meet the challenge and get in front of it. So I want to thank you, Secretary, for all that you do and for being with me today. Governor Newsom, I want to thank you. You know, the President and I think actually even perhaps before we were sworn in, but certainly around that time, which is a year ago, had been convening governors from the western states in particular to address this epidemic, if you will, of wildfires. And Governor Newsom has been a leader among leaders in being a forceful voice around the importance of the federal, state, and local relationship and partnership and has been a clear voice about what is important in terms of preparing for the next wave, in addition to what we must do to provide relief in terms of the disasters that have already occurred. Governor Newsom, I want to thank you. Senator Padilla and Congressman Aguilar, Chairman, I want to thank you both. I was joking with them earlier. The President and I and all of us could not do what we're doing in terms of the announcements today were they not in the United States Congress producing all of the leadership that is important for those checks to get drawn so that they can be signed. They advocate in an extraordinary way, and I happen to know, because of my 4 years in the Senate, that it is not always easy. You know, the western states have a particular need around wildfires. There's been so much about the history and tradition of federal response to natural disasters that has been grounded on natural disasters that are not wildfires. They take, for example, hurricanes, tornadoes. And this epidemic of wildfires is relatively new in that there have always been wildfires in one form or another, but the frequency and the intensity and the ubiquity of wildfires just in the last couple of years, as the governor talked about, is extraordinary and requires our federal government to see what is happening and act in real time. And that is the work that is finally happening in a way that the government and the federal government is not slow to react, but has been quick to react to deal with the needs that are present and are serious in terms of the impact on real life, property, and the well-being of whole communities. I am a daughter of California, a proud daughter of California, so I bring perhaps to this issue a bit of personal experience. Growing up where we had droughts, growing up in these conditions, understanding the seriousness of being able to respond quickly. Our family, in the last few years, we had evacuation orders because of the wildfires. So I understand from personal experience how many people in a state of 40 million people, and when you talk about western states, you're talking about tens of millions of people, are under threat of these kinds of disasters. I personally was on the ground and visited after the Tubbs fire in Santa Rosa in 2017. I was on the ground at Paradise in 2018 during the Camp Fire and the Creek Fire in Fresno in 2020, where the governor and I, Governor Newsom and I, visited. The extraordinary courage of these firefighters is the kind of courage that includes them fighting fires while they are aware that their own home may be burning. I've met firefighters who were fighting fires while their own home was burning. We are talking about firefighters in terms of the Forestry Service, the U.S. Forestry Service, who have been working in response to these extreme fires around the clock. These are folks who aren't saying, my time is up, my shift is over. They work multiple shifts, often without enough sleep and certainly without enough rest in terms of dealing with the danger that they face every day and what that requires from the human spirit to be able to take it on and run into danger, to prevent that danger from spreading to other human beings. So the work the President and I are doing is about meeting this moment, understanding that the climate crisis has almost everything to do with what we are seeing in terms of the crisis of wildfires. It is about recognizing that we cannot, as a government or as a society or people who care, only respond in reaction to a moment of harm or danger. We must also be able to use technology and common sense and the expertise of those on the ground to understand we have the tools to predict these wildfires ahead of time. And once we are able to then do that, does it not compel us to say, what are we doing to prevent the knowable or the predictable? So much of what we are doing today is about an announcement that is about a federal, a state, and a local collaboration around preparedness and what we can do to engage in resilience, meaning what we can do to strengthen communities so if they are hit, that they can bounce back. And before that, what can we do to help communities so that not only are we dealing with forests, but we are talking with homeowners and reaching out to communities to figure out how we can support them to create a community that is less likely to be so significantly damaged if a fire should hit. So this is the best way to fight, we believe, is to focus not only on reaction, but on prevention. What can we do in terms of resilience? So today we are announcing, as the Secretary mentioned, $48 million for an approach to the country that is really about making forests healthier and safer. And it is focused on what we need to do to be resilient to wildfires and to deal with what we can do to support communities in terms of their resilience. The other important announcement we are making today is that we are committing $1.3 billion to disaster relief funding, including $600 million for California. And again, some of the work that we've been doing and that these congressional leaders have been doing, we've been doing in the administration, is to realize that so many of the traditions around our federal agencies in response to disasters and natural disasters has not been focused necessarily on the nature and pathology of fires. And so we are working with this funding to make sure that we are putting the resources where they are needed to address the unique challenges that fires present. And this is in addition to the investments that we have made in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. I can't talk enough about what we were able to accomplish with that law, bipartisan, that is going to directly benefit this issue. Specifically, there will be $5 billion and more, actually, for wildfire preparedness and resilience, and it will include, and this requires its own conversation, a pay raise for our federal firefighters. And I invite everyone to become familiar with the history of this issue and for how long they have been underpaid given the nature and value of their work. And so we are very, very excited to acknowledge their work, not only in words, but with the pay that recognizes the value of the skill and the dignity of the work that they perform. We are also, as part of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, announcing $1 billion in wildfire defense grants. That is based on some legislation that I sponsored when I was in the Senate and work that is being done by our Congress. And third, funding for satellite wildfire tracking programs. As you know, I head the Space Council for the United States. And I invite everyone, when you are able to come to D.C., Governor, to join the Senator and the Congressman and the Secretary and me and come out to Goddard, which is where you can see satellites that the United States is sending to literally do everything, of course, that we can do with satellite technology, from GPS to all of the things that you benefit from. But the satellites that we've got up there that allow us to predict the track of fires, but also to see those areas of a state that are prone to fire so that we can put the resources there ahead of time. And again, about prevention and what we can do to invest in resilience. So this is some exciting work. And I'll close my comments by saying this. This is a subject that requires us to understand that when we as a country get in front of an issue, it is not because of any one leader or any one approach. It is because there is collaboration. It is because there is a recognition that the work that happens on the ground usually requires great skill and hard work that should be rewarded. There is the work that is about collaboration between governments. We are our best when local, state, and federal work together hand in hand, unencumbered by politics or partisanship. There's the work that we do as community to continue to inform the community about what is available to them so they can exercise their power to keep their families and themselves safe. The work we are announcing today and celebrating today is a function of all of those approaches, and I'm very proud of the folks who, in particular, are on the ground doing this work every day. As I've said before, I will say again, you inspire us all. Thank you.